good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to be here, and I really appreciate this award this evening. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather tonight, also, and thank and give my thanks to the Institute for inducting me into the Hall of Fame. It's a real honour, and particularly when I know there's so many within the accounting profession who do a wonderful job in contributing back to the profession. I feel very special to be able to receive this award. It's actually made me reflect a little bit on my career, actually, and some of the things I've learned across the years. And a couple of events stand out. They're not sort of super significant events in terms of my career, but they stand out for me, and I just thought I'd share them for you, the moments in time, really. As has been pointed out, I was a student in central Queensland in the late 60s, early 70s. I used to pick up jobs, particularly for the long holidays in the region, Mount Morgan mines, as a postman, retail, council, local council. And I always learned a lot in those roles, the organisations, and I learned a lot about people and engagement. And I always say the one thing I learned across my career was the absolute importance of stakeholder management, relationship management. It's so important. You spend your time at university learning about debits and credits, but not so much about relationship management. For me, it was number one on the way through. But a key call important to my career arose when I was working at the local council. I was involved in considering some of the council's financing arrangements with the office executive. He was a lovely man with a sharp crew cut that was considerably shorter than my locks at the time. We did some good work together, and at the end of my time he offered me a scholarship to finish my studies and join the council's admin team. I said, wonderful. He said to me, there's only one condition. And I said, well, what's that? He said, you get a haircut. I said, can you leave that with me? Because I viewed this matter pretty seriously as a serious condition at the time. So I went home that evening, and without a word of a lie, in the letterbox was an offer of a Commonwealth cadetship to finish my studies. No such conditions attached. So I, of course, grabbed that one and joined the public service and managed to keep my locks for a bit longer. I very much enjoyed working in the public sector. As has been pointed out, I worked across a number of agencies. I certainly started with the Audit Office and went to finance and wandered between the two organisations across the year, spent some time at the Bureau of Statistics. So it was a wonderful career and allowed me to follow my interests and particularly in the accounting side of things. The second experience I wanted to mention, though, was when I was in the finance department in Canberra. I worked for an individual called David Shand, who some people in this room will know David from many years ago. He was a great guy, and I enjoyed working with me. And he said to me one day, Ian, the ACT division their public sector of the CPA has got a public sector committee, and there's a vacancy. Would you like to be involved? And I said, David, this sounds really interesting. I'll certainly like to be considered for that role. So, and as it turned out, I managed to get onto that committee. Then I got onto the divisional council, and then I eventually became the president of the ACT division of CPA Australia, and kicked on there from there onto the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. Became chair of that, and as was pointed out, involved in the Auditing Board and the Accounting Standards Board as well in Australia, and then internationally got involved as well on the auditing side and the Ethics Board as well. So, but the point I really wanted to make was that was a journey stimulated by David Shand for me. And it's such an important message that I learned in my career about encouraging younger ones to get involved in the profession, contribute, whatever their profession is. It doesn't have to be accounting, whatever their interests are. Get involved, and And I've been supported across the years too by the accounting bodies in all the roles I've undertaken, and certainly Joe Haste here, who helped me out on the Ethics Standards Board internationally. Great assistance to me, and thanks, Joe, for doing that. But it won't surprise you that these experiences and those I've gained from the paths I've chosen have really helped shape my view of the world, and also my encouragement of staff, as I say, to be involved in professional activity. I've also appreciated the importance of public interest considerations for both the accounting profession and, of course, public administration. They go hand in hand, and I think the profession tends to be a bit understated about its contribution to the public interest, but it's real and it's tangible and certainly evident in the body of the professional standards that the accounting profession has. And I just wanted to use as an illustration, as touched on earlier, I was involved as a member and chair of the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board in the late 80s and early 90s, when the profession funded and developed the Australian Public Sector Accounting Standards. And it wasn't a pushover to get that done, but we managed to see the adoption of these standards by the federal and the state governments here in this country, an enormous change. I was a division head at that stage in the finance department, and it was wonderful to see the change that came about through those standards. And it wasn't just because of the better quality information, it was because accountants went from being middle-level managers in most places, working in back rooms, to being senior executives in key roles on strategic boards, informing important decisions about policy stances, about strategies to take in the organisation. So it was really good. The other thing was, I thought, so when we were in finance and got the agreement green light to take forward the accrual accounting in government, we gave departments and agencies 3 years to get there, basically. We thought they'd need time to get their systems and processes in place. And I thought, yeah, they'll all come on in 3 years' time and we'll be good. The public service is very good at being responsive, or I often say box ticking when I'm unkind, but no, I was wrong. And about a third of departments and agencies came on in the first year, and a third the second year, and the hard ones the last year. And so it was a bit of the competitiveness and accountants wanting to make a contribution as early as practicable in their role. So I was very pleased to see that. The other thing is great examples of leadership. The Defence Department, always a tough place to... Because in the past, you can imagine, they just used to count quantities of tents or rifles or tanks. It didn't matter about what they might cost or all of that sort of stuff. So bringing in accrual accounting and inventory accounting, for example, was a real challenge there. And for a couple of years, they were, I think a disclaimer of opinion may have been issued on their accounts. But it took a while, but I have to say the leadership of the then Secretary, who was Rick Smith, the Defence Forces Chief, Peter Cosgrove, and Minister Brendan Nelson all showed leadership when it mattered to see the changes through, and it was wonderful to see. And particularly on the Defence Forces side, Peter Cosgrove, a lot of the services people worked in warehouses, etc., where inventory management was required, etc. And I remember we got together. We said, I was back in the audit office in those days. I said, look, you need to take a bit of a staged approach to this, get across these disclaimers, deal with particular issues, and instead of trying to sort them all out in the 1 year. And he got up and stood in front of his people and said, look, we're part of the solution here, and we need to contribute to this. And so once we got the service personnel as well as the civilian staff there on board through the leadership of Peter Cosgrove, it made a huge difference. And even, I think I can tell this story with the statute of limitations in place, but even in talking to Brendan Nelson, I said, you know, you can put up with a qualification for another year or two if you're inclined, but you just need to make progress. And he said, no, this goes to our standing in the cabinet room. You know, the fact that, you know, when he puts forward estimates or whatever, if he's getting his accounts qualified, his colleagues will twist his tail a bit and say, well, you know, how can we rely on what you're saying when you know, we know your accounts are being qualified, etc. So good on him. He said, no, we want to nail this. And he put his weight behind it too. So it was wonderful, wonderful to see. So I think that's an example of the accounting profession stimulating significant change in the public sector and better information for decision making. And yet, probably if you ask many people, they wouldn't appreciate the key role the profession made back then. So it's that understated position that the profession always takes, but it's terribly important to that. And certainly, can I say too, Dan McKay is here tonight, but the work of the Australian Accounting Research Foundation that Dan used to work for out in Caulfield, they were a powerhouse of staff who contributed to the development of accounting standards in this country and the public sector as well. And they're really wonderful to make that contribution. I think back in those days too, it was the profession itself that was funding all of this work. Government does it more these days, but it was a serious contribution by the profession. So pleasing to see that. But even to this day, the work on sustainability reporting and leading edge topics like firm culture and governance, which is being progressed by Channa Singh here, a member and soon to be Deputy Chair of the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants. Channa, well done, and we're so pleased with your contribution and the fact that you've been made Deputy Chair of the International Ethics Standards Board. It's a great contribution. So I think it's important not to be shy in promoting the profession's contribution in the public interest, but also it's important, as has been made a point earlier, that we accept responsibility too for acting in the public interest. I say this not only because this is critically important to the profession's standing, but because going forward we need to attract more students to accounting-related degrees. As mentioned, one of the roles I've undertaken in recent years as an honorary professor at the ANU Research School of Accounting. And amongst other things, this involves each year we do a lecture which is jointly presented by the ANU and CPA Australia. And this year the lecture was on public sector accounting contributions to better government. And it was done by two senior executive CFOs in the public sector, Amy Fox and Brad Medland, both one from finance, one from DFAT, Foreign Affairs and Trade. And it was interesting that Amy made the point that today there's less skilled students who are attracted to study accounting and significantly less university students are choosing accounting-related degrees. So I think as a profession we've got some work to do in building the profile or further building the profile of CFOs in the public sector, but probably more broadly in other sectors of the economy as well. And I think there's a lot we can contribute here about members of the profession and the topics as touched on today, the issues we're dealing with today about sustainability reporting, business transformation, and program-specific performance reporting in the public sector, which is a fairly significant issue in which the accounting profession and auditors are getting involved in, are all new roles that are building on the collective experience and standards of the profession and add to the critical role that accountants already play in the public sector today. So I think these responsibilities will add to the capacity, certainly of those within the profession, to contribute an even broader perspective on organisational performance. I know from my experience I became interested in the alignment of the people to organisational goals during my career, and I think these new additions will only add to the level of interest in the work of the profession. And since, as has been pointed out, since my retirement as Auditor-General and building on my work and previous experience, I've undertaken a number of reviews, which I always find interesting to undertake those. And I was just telling the story earlier about my when I retired as Auditor-General. Some of you will know there's a fixed term, 10 years, it's for independence reason, 10 years, and you're out the door. And so I was there for the 10 years, and about a month before the end of the 10 years came along, I got a call from the head of PM&C, and he said to me, Ian, he said, the process to find your replacement is taking a little bit longer than planned. Can you hang around a bit longer? And I said to him, well, yeah, I know the legislation pretty well. The requirements are 10 years and you're out. And he said to me, Ian, we've had the lawyers have a look at the legislation. There's actually a provision for an acting Auditor-General as well. And he said, we can have you as acting Auditor-General for a little bit longer. And I said, well, okay. I said, look, I'm happy to help out. There's no problem with that. But I said to the staff, no way in the world are you calling me the acting Auditor-General after I've been doing this. And I changed the letterhead from being, Ian McPhee, Auditor-General, etc. I changed it to Office of the Auditor-General. I just signed my name, Ian McPhee. So I don't know. I didn't check with the lawyers on that, but I figured it was pretty good. But look, the experience you gain, I have gained, has been wonderful, and certainly for me, leadership and management, and even when I do these reviews, sure, I use a structure, a very simple, I start with a simple quadrant matrix, which or a balanced scorecard, which basically considers stakeholders, products and services, staff and contractors, and business systems and support. Just a simple contract. Look at the strategies for the organisation related to that. See how they're tracking, what they can do. I keep an eye on some of those management books. The best one I ever came across was Jim Collins' Good to Great, and some wonderful insights and concise story. I mean, he's a bit of a hard marker, but he basically said, when you're in a new job and you need to sort out the organisation, he said, make sure, step one, get the right people on the bus. Then you start talking about strategy and approach and all that sort of stuff. So, some wonderful messages like that. I mean, a bit blunt and a bit brutal in reality, but clear. And so I always interested in that. And as I say, for many people, including me, leadership and management, very much a journey. We keep on learning, most of us, and few of us ever arrive. But execution is the challenge. We all know the theory. We all know what we're supposed to be doing, but just quite how to get there in the best way is a bit more challenging. But as you'll have gathered, I think, just getting back to the accounting profession, I think the accounting profession's got a lot to be pleased with at both a national and international level, and has contributed a lot to organisational performance. It's been progressive and consultative in advancing its consideration of contemporary topics, and we are working from pretty solid foundations. So the quality of our work obviously is critically important, and we must continue to emphasise the importance of quality services and public interest considerations in the professional role. So the only thing I would say is, based on that research lecture, we've all got a little bit more to do in promoting the contribution the profession makes to the next generation of accountants, and encouraging their active involvement in the work of the profession. So we shouldn't hide any longer the level of interest and excitement we experience every day in the work of the profession. We need to encourage younger ones to keep studying accounting at school and later at university. So it's been great to spend some time with you this evening. Thanks so much for my induction to CMA Australia. Much appreciated.